whenever I cover the original couples, I'm also going to cover before the first 3 weeks, and then I'll cover after the first 3 weeks. Oh god, I hate this show. Hello and welcome back to the Miscellaneous channel where we do miscellaneous things. I'm Zeleny. I typically cover TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things on this channel, so subscribe if that's your vibe. So Netflix has done it again, lowering the bar for us all with a new trashy reality dating show that is a spiritual successor to their Love is Blind franchise, and that is The Ultimatum. Think of The Ultimatum as Love is Blind's silver cup cousin. It has a lot of similar elements. Nick and Vanessa Lachey host and are questionable. It has the same generic stock music with very obvious lyrics. And of course, it takes place in Austin, Texas, the city where I live, and Netflix is actively terrorizing. The Ultimatum was teased on Love is Blind Season 2's reunion. I had no idea when I saw the trailer that it would take place in Austin. That pool that they're at for the first few episodes, I used to work like a block away from that, and I would walk by it all the time. And of course, every 5 minutes they showed aerial shots of Austin, making it look like some annoying utopia for people to move to. And you know what the stupid thing is? They go to all these Austin restaurants and bars and whatever, and they're empty. Whenever you go anywhere in Austin, it's fucking packed. Keep in mind they're going at like 10 a.m. on a Tuesday, probably to film. So I already watched all 8 episodes, and they go to quite a few Austin locations, and they did go to my favorite place in Austin, like my absolute favorite place. I'm not gonna tell you what it was because I am a gatekeeping bitch. So I'm gonna put detailed timestamps down below if you want to skip around the video, but I want to get right to it because we have a lot to cover. Is The Ultimatum worth watching? I say no, not really. I mean, if you really love Love is Blind and trashy dating reality shows, sure, you might like it. It just felt excessively fake, and I had that feeling with Love is Blind Season 2 as well, that it really felt like everyone's just there to be an influencer. Everyone looks like an influencer. Sometimes I get the feeling they're all actors. I am at the point where I am consuming this show as fiction, and that's something that turned me off of the show in general. Also, the format is really complicated and weird and feels like a dumb idea for a social experiment. Like, it feels like there's a lot of holes in it, and that's what makes me feel like it's very produced and manufactured, because for this concept to even work out, it feels like it would take a miracle. It's a difficult concept to execute. There was a bit of a moment in the season where the reality show kind of blew up a little bit and felt like it was not gonna work, but then it did, and they kept going. I don't know if I would have finished it if I wasn't planning to make a video about it. But anyway, even though I'm consuming this as a work of fiction, from now on in the video I am going to suspend my disbelief and pretend like these are real people. This is also the part where I give the disclaimer that there's a lot we don't see, and when I pass judgment on these people, it is for that persona they played on the show, the edit they were given, not the actual person behind the TV show. So that's important to keep in mind. People get really passionate about these shows and criticizing. I also saw a lot of people in discussions about this show already like criticizing everyone's appearance, saying none of them are hot, they're all so unattractive, and it's just like, they all look like Instagram models. Like, I don't know what to tell you. Something that I do think is going to be worth watching is The Ultimatum's Season 2. The Ultimatum actually already got renewed before it even premiered for a new season. Netflix dropped this weird boy band parody thing to promote it, and in that video it mentioned that The Ultimatum Season 2 was going to be all queer and mostly women. When I heard about that, I was very intrigued because you don't often see dating shows about LGBT people. I think it'll be really interesting, and the ultimatums and the reasons behind the ultimatums is going to be a lot more interesting with queer people. So despite my negative feelings about Season 1, I will be checking out Season 2. I bet it's just going to be a bunch of wannabe queer influencers influencers on season 2, but I'd rather have queer influencers than a bunch of basic straight influencers. For me, good for the LGBT people getting their coin as well and their chance to be influencers after this. So let's talk about the ultimatum and the format. Buckle up because this format is so weird. I had to color code my notes because it was just a mess. So the concept of the ultimatum is that 6 couples go into the show. They've all been dating for around 2 years, and one person in the couple wants to get married and one does not. The premise of the show is that the one that wants to get married is giving an ultimatum to their partner that doesn't, and by the end of the show they either have to fulfill the ultimatum and say, yes, we're getting married, or break up forever, which is the meaning of an ultimatum in real life. I've never been in a situation where I had to issue an ultimatum, but I do find it generally, I'm sure there's exceptions like Vanessa and Nick Lachey apparently, where an ultimatum works out, but it does feel like it can be generally toxic to have to rely on almost forcing your partner to do something that you want. Nick Lachey even said at the beginning that psychologists disagree that ultimatums are a good way to get your partner to do what you want. So basically, psychologists do not endorse ultimatums. Nick and Vanessa are like, but we endorse them because they worked for us and they tell their story, which is very specific. Vanessa wanted to get married and Nick didn't, and they ended up breaking up and they each dated a different person and then they got back together and got married. They basically translated their exact and specific and niche story into a whole reality show, which is, I guess, what they like to do now. So in the show, the 6 couples come in and they spend one last night together, and then after that they're going to go on a break. During the break, they have to find a partner with one of the other couples to live with for 3 weeks. So basically they need to find a new boyfriend or girlfriend to do a trial marriage for 3 weeks and see what it's like without their current long-term partner. After the 3 weeks trial with the new person, they get back with their original partners and live for 3 weeks with them. And then at the end of that is when they make a decision of, do they get married or do they break up with their original partner, and do they potentially start dating the person they trial marriaged with. Really bizarre concept. It seems really specific, and that's where I feel like they're all actors, because like, how do you even cast such a specific range of people? You need couples in long-term relationships, but not too long. Everyone needs to look like an Instagram model. Everyone needs to be really young. Everyone was in their early 20s, maybe a couple in their late 20s. And they have to be down to like kind of cheat and kind of not, and have their partner kind of cheat and kind of not, and force this ultimatum on them. It's like, where do you find people that want to do this? It literally seems impossible, and that's where I'm like, I think it is impossible and they just pay models. I don't know. It's just a theory. A lot of times with these dating shows that feel very like conventional, like we're trying to get married, we're trying to have kids, I feel like they're just an excuse for like traditional people to experiment with socially taboo concepts like polyamory, like being swingers, cheating. Like, I'm convinced at this point that Nick and Vanessa Lachey are swingers, because who else would think of this concept? One of the weird parts of the show is that the dating pool is all the other couples. Like, you don't get new single people in this. It's everyone in a similar boat. After the first couple episodes, they have to choose their new partner, and I was just like, how is this gonna work if people don't match up evenly, basically? I don't know. It somehow worked out, and sort of, for the most part, it worked out. I went on the Ultimatum and the Love is Blind subreddits to see in general what people were saying about this show. It was kind of mixed. Some people were really living for it because they like messy drama of Love is Blind, and others were like, oh, this is just stupid and too much. I saw a lot of comments about the ages of the contestants, and I think that is the weirdest part to me. All of them are really young. They're like 23 to 26 years old. It's wild because I'm 27. Everyone on this show is younger than me. And something even weirder to me is that everyone younger than me is Gen Z, meaning that everyone on this show is Gen Z. And it just feels, there's only one couple that I'll get to that felt kind of like Gen Z-ish, but everyone else just feels so like Gen X even, like I don't know, they feel so rigid and trying to be so traditional and wanting a house and marriage and kids immediately, and I'm just like, enjoy your youth, people. There was one girl who was an antinatalist and I got excited because I don't want to have kids personally, and you never see that in dating shows, a girl that doesn't want to have kids. And then an episode later she's like, oh, I could be convinced actually, you're right, we were so close to having someone represent just a different perspective, and then she folded and was like, I don't know, baby. Another thing that stood out to me on this show was the amount of alcohol. They have a similar method as Love is Blind where they have gold wine glasses everywhere. This one had silver to make it different. Someone in my comments finally told me that the reason they do that is so that you don't see the drink amount, so they can edit things more easily for continuity. In the Ultimatum, it's even worse than Love is Blind, in my opinion, with the alcohol they give them. Every time there was a group outing or a reunion of some kind, and there were a few throughout the 8 episodes, they were wasted. Like, they were slurring their words. And on Love is Blind, you do have those moments here and there, but it's not every time. And everyone, like, at the table, it wasn't just like one person, like Jessica being messy or something. Maybe this cast just couldn't hold their alcohol well, but it stood out to me that they pumped them with alcohol for these emotional scenes. They're pretty young, and I feel bad. It does feel kind of exploitative to me to be forcing alcohol so much, and it's very common in these dating shows like The Bachelor, Are You the One? They purposely don't feed them and give them extra alcohol so that things happen. And by things, I mean fights and sex, potentially. But mostly fights. So let me get into these episodes, and girl, I don't even know how to approach, oh God. I'm just gonna break it down by couple. I'm going to go by OG couples. I'm gonna cover how they came in and then how their journey was at the end, and then I'll go into specifics about each new pairing. I kind of just want to give my thoughts on each couple's journey. This is your spoiler alert. I'm going to be talking about all 8 episodes that are out right now. If this video gets some views, I will do a part 2 about the finale and the reunion, which come out next week. But if no one watches this, I'm not that invested to keep going. So first I'm going to cover the 2 couples that didn't really make it onto the main part of the show. Let me start with Alexis and Hunter. This couple is funny because they were the most like odd ones out of the rest of the group, I thought. I'm pretty sure Alexis walked out of the womb looking like a real housewife. Everyone else is trying to be an influencer, but she is ready to be on Real Housewives of Orange County tomorrow. And it's funny because Hunter looks like the husbands from Real Housewives franchises. So they just both looked more mature than they were. And I said I don't like to harp on looks too much, but if you were to tell me to guess how old this couple is, I would say a comfortable 40. To me, it's clear Alexis has had a lot of work done, and that's part of it. So Alexis had a rough time in the mingling part of trying to find a new partner. Everyone else did look very youthful and like Instagram, and I don't know. She and Hunter both, to me, were out of the leagues of everyone else on this show. Sorry to them, I'm not gonna be that shady to anyone else, honestly. I'm trying to keep it real. So Alexis tries to flirt with Colby, who is the villain of the season, and we'll get to him when we get to his couple, but she does get rejected by him. He says he's not attracted to her. He doesn't put it in the harshest way ever, not in the nicest way possible, but he says it pretty straightforwardly and calmly. That was enough for Alexis to have a total freak out at Colby, saying he was horrible, mean, and nasty. And Colby is, honestly, but you don't find that out till way later. It's kind of a broken clock is right twice a day moment. Alexis had a big freak out about Colby, told Colby's partner that he's a horrible person, yelled at him in front of everybody, and it was just not a good look for Alexis. She's also really into luxury things. I'm telling you, she's ready for Real Housewives, and she's mad that Hunter makes less money than her. Hunter, on the other hand, actually does have some luck in the mingling and hits it off with April because he comforts her. April has an argument with her partner and breaks down, and Hunter comes and comforts her and is like, it's all gonna be okay, and just tells her over and over. That scene, April took it as very sweet, but to me it kind of reeked of desperation on Hunter's part. Like, he just needed to find a partner, and just the amount that he was comforting her, it felt desperate to me. But April didn't think so, and she ended up choosing him at the ceremony. But it was then when Hunter blew up the reality show and said, I choose Alexis, the partner he came in with, and proposed then and there. So he fulfilled the ultimatum that was supposed to happen at the very end of the show at the choosing ceremony, much to Vanessa and Nick Lachey's disappointment. Alexis and Hunter were pretty much gone after that, aside from when she came back later in the season to do a bachelorette party. Though it wasn't a bachelorette party because none of her friends or family were there. It was just like a excuse for producers to gather all the girls and get all the tea about everybody. Literally, Alexis was assigned to question everybody, it felt like. Sorry, I didn't say for Alexis and Hunter, it was Alexis giving him the ultimatum. She just was obsessed with having a wedding. So next we had Lauren and Nate. This was another couple that ended up the same way Hunter and Alexis did, engaged by episode 2 or 3, except it wasn't as special this time because someone had just gotten engaged right there. And this one was more messy and complicated. This was the couple that was the antinatalist couple. So Lauren doesn't want kids and Nate really wants kids. Nate is the one giving her the ultimatum because he wants her to commit to marriage and the possibility of kids, while she supposedly feels very strongly about not wanting to have kids. Again, I felt represented in Lauren for the audacity to not want children on this traditional dating show. Colby strikes again and mingles with her in the mingling time of the show. Colby tells Lauren, like, kids are wonderful, blah, blah, blah. And it doesn't take much convincing for Lauren to be like, maybe I do want kids. I was just like, girl, what kind of representation is this? Lauren felt kind of fickle in the kids thing. I don't know what's real or not about that. And then at the choosing ceremony, Nate chooses Shanique because he had a good connection with her about dogs and stuff. They both like dogs. Oh my god, revolutionary. Oh, and both probably want kids. Nate wanted everyone that wanted kids. So Nate chooses Shanique and gets rejected basically. Nate chooses April then and then gets rejected by her. And then when Colby at the choosing ceremony chooses Lauren, Nate steps in and is like, actually, I'm proposing too. And he goes and proposes to Lauren and is like, I don't care, you don't want kids. Everyone else in the cast was livid. Mainly April, who spoke up about how they are ruining this experience and that it's stupid that Nate had just chosen 2 other people basically. It felt like just a desperate attempt to not end up alone on Nate's part. He was like, shit, I don't have my first choice, I don't have my second choice, I guess my third choice, I'll just take my current partner because who else am I gonna go with? So Lauren and Nate seemed really toxic and almost everyone on the cast spoke up saying that this engagement was shit, they are shit, Nate is an asshole. I agree with all of that. And April said it really well, even though she was very emotional. She was right that they all signed up for this and basically Nate was like, my end of the deal isn't looking good anymore, so I'm gonna cop out and just propose right now. Colby is someone that's attacking Nate a lot in this because I think he just wanted to be with Lauren. She had her BBL big display in the pool session. The whole pool time was boob jobs and BBLs on display. People are also a little mad at Lauren for saying yes because Nate is clearly an ass and doing this for stupid reasons. It is what it is and they leave the show. We don't hear from them again. So finally we have our real couples that make it through to the end of the show at least. Let me start with April and Jake. April is the one who issued the ultimatum. She is really obsessed with having kids and a marriage ASAP. Jake just got out of the Marines in the military and he is trying to wait and to be financially stable and take his time. April is 23 years old. I think Jake is young too, and it just feels like, yeah, y'all need to slow down and chill out. April later on opens up that she has infertility issues and that they don't even use protection ever because they've been welcoming of a potential pregnancy, but it hasn't happened and her body just works against her. It's important to show that issue because I think a lot of women struggle with that. As much as I don't want kids, it definitely sucks for the people that really want them to not be able to. So April and Jake go on to new partners for 3 weeks and then come back together for the final 3 weeks of the show. That part of the show is called the changeover, so I'm going to be using that term. Post changeover, April and Jake are a little bit rocky but generally solid. However, April has this moment where she goes through Jake's phone and finds videos of his other partner twerking, and Jake and his new partner did kind of get far in things and had a pretty strong connection, so April has a lot to be jealous of. I don't think that warrants going through someone's phone. I never understand that method of going through a significant other's phones. I think that's a violation of privacy. But every time I hear of that happening, they do find stuff, so I'm just like, maybe if you have probable cause, that makes sense, but it just seems toxic all around. April has to deal with a lot of hearing about Jake and his new partner, Rae. She's often pretty emotional when she hears about them at all. Eventually, Jake does forgive April for the phone incident, and he seems to be trying to make it work with her despite him having a strong other connection. There's a moment in the final 3 weeks where April thinks she's pregnant. She's like not drinking alcohol, but then later on finds out she isn't pregnant, and she tells Jake in a passive-aggressive way because she's like, I know you'll be happy that I'm not pregnant. It's a little toxic. Something interesting was that Jake's mom loves April. When Jake's mom met the new girl, she was not having it. She was obsessed with April only, loves her like a daughter already. April really has her mother-in-law like secured in the bag. So at the end of these, I want to say if I think they're gonna make it, because we haven't seen the finale yet. April and Jake, I feel kind of 50-50 on, because April and Jake have been one of the more solid ones in general, but at the same time, Jake has this great connection with Rae. So I'm really confused by Jake specifically because April's all in. April kind of had a sham trial marriage, so there's nothing to worry about with her saying no to Jake, and she gave the ultimatum as well. I don't know what Jake's gonna do, but it's ultimately his choice because at this point, his new partner is single. I would bet that they would stay together. But I do think Jake and his new partner, they were the new pairing that had the most potential together, and all of the cast kept telling them that, so everyone's kind of in agreement that they are a good match. So let me move on to Rae and Zay. Speak of the devil, we were just talking about Rae. She came in with her original partner, Zay. Rae is the one who issued the ultimatum on Zay. She wants to get married because she's ready. Rae recently graduated college and Zay is still working on that. He is kind of living the party life because he works in nightlife and is kind of an influencer. That's the thing, some of these are already influencers. They're just trying to boost their audience. I don't blame them. So Rae and Zay were one of the more unstable ones, which I didn't get that impression at first, honestly. At the beginning, I thought they were solid. They seem to be very about their sex life. Zay wants it 2 to 3 times a day, and Rae knows how to fuck, she said. So they were sort of the more sexual ones of the group. Before they parted on the first night, they were like, we're just trying to find what's best for each other individually, what's healthiest for us. So they seem to have a good understanding of like at least individual autonomy, and I don't know, they were some of the most emotionally mature I saw, but that really unraveled later on. There was this weird moment in the beginning where Rae, she couldn't answer the question about why she wanted to marry Zay specifically. The producer asked her, why do you want to marry Zay? And she was like, next question. And that's what I feel like with a lot of these ultimatum people that issue an ultimatum, and this goes for the guys that did and the girls that did. To me, issuing that kind of ultimatum about like we have to get married, it feels like these people just want to marry anybody. They just want to have a wedding to have a wedding. Whoever it is placeholder, and that's the part about some of these couples that it's just like, you just want a marriage, but you don't care who it's to. And it feels strange to approach a relationship like that. Rae gives me that vibe where she wants just the marriage part of it, and Zay is more inconsequential in the equation. Rae is also pretty jealous. At the choosing ceremony, she has this kind of breakdown from hearing about Zay's other connections. She has a very strong reaction. Nick and Vanessa are like, this is normal, it's natural. And it's just like, no, it isn't. The reaction is, but this experiment isn't. And it's ridiculous to try to simulate this weird rebound swinger thing. Anyway, I'm getting off track. After the changeover, Rae and Zay really have trouble. Zay has trouble with Rae because she doesn't open up a lot. She's pretty reserved in how she approaches conflict, while Zay is very confrontational. He's kind of aggressive about arguing. He even argued with his new pair in the 3 weeks, while Rae had a great time with her new partner who was chill and calm and didn't argue. They were a lot more similar in their demeanor. So in those final 3 weeks, Rae and Zay argue a lot about this. He feels like she didn't grow at all because she hasn't become more confrontational, and she feels like he didn't grow at all because he's just the same, confrontational and not listening. So they're a mess, and they're pretty unstable afterwards, and eventually they do break up, which I'm glad they did. They just clearly weren't compatible in their communication styles, and it was to the point where every conversation we saw of them ended in a weird argument that they both couldn't even agree on how to argue. The breaking point was when Zay went out. He goes out to party a lot in nightlife, but he didn't come home until 8 a.m. He turned off his phone, location, everything was not available to be reached by Rae at all. And she said it's normal for him to come home at like 2 or 3 a.m. after the bars closed, but this was new. This was the last straw for her, and they eventually broke up. They try kind of to argue and converse. It just doesn't work. So by the end, they're single, and I think that's great for them. Zay had an okay connection with his new partner, but I don't think it has the potential to break off her thing for. When they broke up and both became single, they actually both went to meet up with their new partners from the previous 3 weeks and told them about them being single. I think the show is just trying to make sure the message is clear that you're gonna have a choice between these two at the end, especially for Jake, who actually seems to have a real choice between the two. Shanique, which we'll get to her next, feels more invested in her original relationship. I don't think Zay is gonna walk out of here with anybody, and I don't think he should. He seems like someone that wants to be free and party a lot, so I think this is the best for both Rae and Zay. I think Rae can find someone better if she doesn't end up with Jake. The next is Randall and Shanique, and this is a weird couple because I feel like they had one of the most like boring kind of connections or relationships at the beginning. Like, they didn't stand out to me. Similar to the other, Shanique issued the ultimatum on Randall, who is not ready for marriage and wants to be more financially stable. All the men here were saying they want to be more financially stable before getting married, and honestly, that's fair. They're too young to be worrying about all this, but I'm an old hag, so. I think Randall's a good guy to Shanique, but I think Shanique is kind of petty towards Randall a lot. She's a little bit manipulative. She's often being ridiculous with him, like telling him, you should sit in the corner the whole 3 weeks you're away from me and not do anything and not look at your partner. And things like that where it's like, you know what you signed up for. She was happy to explore things with her new partner. She just felt a little bit hypocritical in how she treated Randall because she was, you know, taking her liberties with Zay. Whenever she found out about Randall and someone else, she was pissed. And Randall's problem with her was that she always wants things done her way, and she's kind of bossy. I don't think they're the most compatible. I think they're both very good-looking people that could find people that are more compatible with them. Not necessarily their new partners, because I feel like both of them didn't have like amazing new connections. I don't think they have a future with each other. I don't know. I'm not sure if they're gonna make it at the end, but I feel like they shouldn't. At the end though, they do seem pretty solid. So I wouldn't be surprised if they do end up together. They kind of talked about lessons learned from the experience, and they feel like one of the only couples that aren't breaking down and yelling at each other that much. And finally, we have Madlyn and Colby, who this couple is the most toxic. I'm convinced Madlyn hated Colby going into it. She hates him coming out of it, hates him all throughout the middle. Like, Madlyn had no feelings for Colby, and I don't blame her. I don't think she should. Colby is a fuckboy. So in this case, Colby actually issued the ultimatum on Madlyn, who is not ready for marriage. He's another one that feels like he just wants to get married to get married, and he was very like, oh, if at the end of this Madlyn doesn't want to get married, I'll find someone who will. So he was convinced that he was getting married to somebody. Who cares if it's Madlyn or not? So I hated them. Madlyn is fine, whatever. Right after the first night, Colby was telling Lauren she was the most beautiful girl in the world. It's like, you just had your girlfriend a day ago. You can't just be saying that to people. So he felt very spineless and two-faced, and he was truly the villain of the season. He was at the center of a lot of controversy. There was one point where all the guys got together and the girls got together kind of mid-season. He had a fight with Zay, not physically, although it almost came to that. Zay at the club, off camera, convinced some girl to go make out with him, and Colby was blaming Zay for this girl coming over to make out with him. I wasn't very clear on the situation, and they did not explain it well. So screw this reality show for not explaining. You always have a confessional of someone explaining the situation, because I feel like we never got great clarity on what happened there. Zay was like, you can't blame me for some girl making out with you. And this makeout girl became very important later on. So I'm double mad they didn't explain the situation better on the show. And Madlyn, like I said, she does not seem into Colby. She is rolling her eyes every time he talks at the choosing ceremony. He does say cringy things. Post changeover, Colby said that he made April into a woman, his new partner. And Madlyn's just like, did she get her first period when she was with you? Did she lose her virginity? And what do you know about being a woman? As cringy as Madlyn was the whole time, I was rooting for her in that moment for calling him out. It was just in a confessional, but still. Madlyn was happy to go with a hotter guy. She wanted sex a lot of the time, while her new partner wasn't really into giving that to her. So the breaking point for this relationship was when Madlyn found a text. She also went through his phone. That's just a thing these messy couples do. Madlyn went through his phone and found texts with the makeout girl, and they sort of had a texting exchange, and it sounds like they've met up while he was with April, so in the previous 3-week time period. He was never honest about that, and he claimed to be after. He was very gaslighty in general, and he tried to defend himself, saying, I did this for you because you said we should date someone else to know if we wanted to get married, to make this real. And he just had every excuse in the book, and it was super lame. All of Madlyn's friends were like, dump his ass. She was like, I don't know. And she kept having conversations with him that would just end in fights. He had this whole thing where she confronted him and he ran away for a day and came back super hungover and didn't want to talk. It was just so bad and toxic, and all her friends were like, girl, get out of this. I feel for those friends trying their best. Finally, at the end, they break up, and Madlyn breaks up with him, even though he's still willing to try and go for it. But in the preview, it still showed them going to the ultimatum final thing, so I'm kind of confused. I think they're broken up, and I don't think they're gonna make it. I don't think they should. I think Madlyn said it best, where she was like, how low of a self-respect would I have if I stayed with this guy? And I agree. If she does, then she said it herself. I think there's no way they're gonna end up together. I'm the most sure about them. Aside from Rae and Zay that already broke up. Okay, so this is a long ass video because we got 4 more new pairings to go through. These shouldn't be as long because it was just a 3-week period they were together. So let's start with our strongest, which I talked about a bit, and that is Rae and Jake. They really hit it off originally because they both love their moms. Who would have thought someone loves their mom? It's just funny to me how in these dating shows they always bond over something really simple. It's like,
oh my god, no, this is so random, but have you ever heard of pizza? Oh my god, I'm obsessed.
And then the guy's like,
oh my god, no way. No way. Me too. I actually love pizza. It's so good, right?
those are the conversations they be having on this. Jake and Rae really hit it off from the beginning, and they form a pretty deep and emotional connection. They're already picturing their life together at the very beginning, just at the mingling part. This is the one pairing that I felt like these are Gen Z kids to me. Everyone else just felt so like ancient and boring, but Jake and Rae just had that Gen Z vibe together, where they were really goofy, and the jokes they kind of made. And you know, at Gen Z, when they wear a hoodie with the hood half up and they're vaping, That's how I identify a Gen Z, and that's the vibe they gave me. There were no vapes shown on the show, but there were hoodies. They were okay being in the same bed on the first night. There was only one couple that didn't share a bed on the first night, so most of them were okay sharing a bed, sleeping together, but most of them didn't go all the way with sex. And honestly, it feels like a trap when you go back to your original partner and they ask you what you did with the new one, and you have to, you know, wiggle your way out of that one. But Rae and Jake just have so much in common. They have very similar demeanors. They even have similar problems with their partners, because Rae is struggling with Zay being an influencer and a lot of women often being after him, like on Instagram and stuff. And Zay doesn't post her because that loses engagement and followers. So it's a whole added element to a relationship. And Jake has the same issue because April is an influencer. Apparently she has 50,000 subscribers. I would too if I looked like her. They actually kissed pretty early on after bonding about some of these things. He meets her dad, and her dad loves him. He's never liked a guy she's dated before. But when they meet Jake's mom, she does not like Rae because she loves April. She's in communication with April frequently. It's kind of weird how Jake's mom is very against Rae at all and doesn't really try to get to know her. I did appreciate that Jake's mom mentioned that like this 3 weeks is very much a honeymoon period, because Jake and Rae seemed really solid together. And I feel like anyone in a long-term relationship, if you found someone compatible with you and spent 3 weeks with them, you wouldn't get to like the deep shit of being in a long-term relationship in those 3 weeks. Like you would just get the fun, new and fresh elements of it, and not all the baggage that comes with your original relationship. So even though Jake's mom was super biased, she did have a point that these 3 weeks are very much a honeymoon period, and it's not indicative of like lack of long-term problems in a relationship. Whenever they have girls' night, Rae has to share about how it's going with Jake, and all the girls are telling her like, you and Jake are awesome, and April's there like, fuck this, and jealous, and walks out or yells or something. But Rae and Jake are always solid. They never argue, they make out, they have a sex toy box, I think, which I didn't think they showed until way later when April found it and got mad. But I'm confused if they were having sex or not. I don't know. It kind of seemed like it. So let's move on to Shanique and Zay, who I've talked about a little bit already. They seem like they had good chemistry. They had more similar communication styles than Zay and Rae did, so they were both more like equals, and like when they butted heads, they had arguments and they were strong fights, but they both at least had similar approaches to the argument. They were the ones that didn't sleep in the same bed for a few nights, I don't know, a week. But it was so funny because Shanique, like on the first night, was being such a tease. She was like bending over and like getting into the bed all sexually, and she even went to bed and then got back up and just to then walk back slowly. It was so funny to me. Towards the very end, she did seem to do some sexual acts with Zay. They seem to have resisted a while because Zay was frustrated by the lack of sex. After Zay and Rae break up, Zay meets up with Shanique and tells her what happened. Shanique calls him out and is like, what you did was so wrong, and she should leave your ass. You should not be out till 8 a.m. That's ridiculous. So it's kind of cool that Shanique took Rae's side. Shanique is very independent and has strong opinions. Throughout the show, she was consistent about like saying how she felt, though towards Randall it's generally more petty and manipulative. So next, let's go to Madlyn and Randall. This relationship felt kind of one-sided to me. Madlyn was really into Randall, and Randall liked Madlyn but didn't seem affectionate to her very often. Madlyn was the one of the girls that got so drunk every time. She was slurring and so wasted. Like, Madlyn at girls' night was the girl at 2 a.m. in the bathroom at the club that is just cheering you on, though she doesn't know where she is. So Madlyn had her moments, and I just don't get why she's with Colby at all in the first place. But she wanted Randall, and I feel like if it's up to her, she is going to make her case to Randall to be with her. I just don't think it's mutual, and I think she sensed that at the end. Randall felt very like blah this whole time. He was so neutral. Like, I barely have any notes about him. So I don't know that much going on with Randall. He's just a pretty face, I feel like. Sorry to this man. Oh, I forgot to mention about Randall and Madlyn. At some point, Madlyn said that when she was 2 a.m. bathroom drunk, Randall kissed her off camera. So that's the thing. Randall, I think, was skeptical of the reality show thing and was not having it. And finally, we have our straggler couple, which is April and Colby. They were put together at the end by default, basically, because Colby had chosen Lauren, and then she got proposed to by Nate, and April had chosen Hunter, and he proposed to Lauren, or to Alexis. So yeah, April and Colby just kind of ended up together. At the very beginning, they bonded over both getting screwed over by their choices and how stupid it all was. Their relationship felt very platonic a lot of the time. They did sleep in the same bed and stuff, but April is very obsessed with Jake, very clingy to him. But Colby's just such a villain this season. I've already talked about all the villainous things he's done. And with April, he was pretty nice, aside from at the end saying he turned her into a woman. They actually did kiss at the end, didn't they? I think at the very end they might have kissed. I feel like they got paid for that. I have a theory on these shows. They get like $100 per kiss. It feels like April had COVID at a certain point because they were staying in a lot and she was kind of like sick. Obviously, they don't mention COVID at all. But COVID was very much a thing in Austin. I lived here and it looked like it was kind of chilly out, so it was probably in the fall or winter, and COVID was definitely a thing here. My theory is April had COVID when she was sick, and I feel like the producers made them play Connect 4 during that time because they had to like play Connect 4 and say reasons why they liked each other or lessons they learned with each other, things like that. And I was like, this is the most producer-ass little board game moment they could have crafted. Obviously, they don't have much of a future. Colby, while he was with April, was pursuing other relationships. It felt like he was just trying to take advantage of like the hall pass to cheat during these 3 weeks, like any douchey man would. Out of the new pairings, I do think Rae and Jake are the only ones with potential. I think all the new pairs were useful for a few lessons and to talk things out, but didn't have any kind of deep emotional connections except for Rae and Jake from what they've shown us. But Jake also has a very strong original relationship, so it's a toss-up. So we shall see in the finale and reunion what happens. I'll be curious about the reunion too because I assume we'll get to catch up with like the original couples that got engaged at the very beginning and then whoever got engaged at the end. But yeah, that's the ultimatum. I'm honestly exhausted. This was a lot of episodes of very manufactured feeling drama and I'm just not buying it. But at least we have the prospects of season 2 being interesting, at least different and unique. So I am excited for season 2 of The Ultimatum. There was a season of Are You the One that was all pansexuals, which if you don't know the concept of the show, that's a whole other complicated mathematical statistics equation. But that's typically a very straight show. And that one season that wasn't was awesome. It was just so much more fascinating. So if you made it this far, congrats. I know it's a long video. I'll probably make a part 2, but it'll likely be a lot shorter because it is just 2 episodes. This was 8 episodes, so it was a lot to cover. Please let me know what you thought of The Ultimatum in the comments below. I would love to hear about it. Do you think it's all fake? Do you believe some of it is real? And who do you think is gonna make it in the finale and in the reunion? Please like this video and subscribe to my channel if you enjoyed. I put out new videos twice a week about TV, pop culture, internet trends, and other miscellaneous things. And you can follow me at Miscellaneous on Instagram or Twitter to find out about new videos, or just turn on the bell notification here on YouTube. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one. Bye!